The Starlight Couriers. Chapter 1. The Whisper of Old Engines. Far beyond the well-traveled paths of the core systems, where freighters shot like needles between stars and politics simmered in orbital stations, the galaxy softened into quiet. In this gentle reach, where light took its time and messages often arrived years late, floated a small, round-edged vessel named the Hollow Finch. She was the kind of ship no one wrote about in travelogues. Her hull bore no scars of battle nor flashy upgrades. Instead, she wore the weathering of time with quiet grace. Sun-faded paint, softened corners, and panels that sometimes rattled with a sound like wind through reeds. Her drive core thrummed low, like the purring of some colossal feline deep in slumber. Captain Emery Fellstone stood at the helm, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of tea that smelled faintly of cardamom and lemon peel. The mug was older than the ship, one of the few keepsakes from her life on Earth, back before stars became her neighbors and quiet became her closest friend. The stars outside were moving slowly, not in the usual way ships perceived through jumps or calculations, but in the way that only became visible after days spent watching. Emery had once read that the ancients on Earth used to chart stars by eye, centuries before artificial gravity or fusion sails. She liked to imagine one of them standing in a field at night, marveling at a sky that now filled her view daily. Behind her, the ship's co-pilot, a large, grayish feline with speckles of gold along his back, stretched in a patch of filtered sunlight near the control deck's curved dome. His name was Nilo. He had been bioengineered in a forgotten laboratory on Leary Station, a product of genetic experimentation and indulgent scientific boredom. He could speak fluent galactic standard, knew 4 dead languages, and preferred to say very little. "You're watching them again," Nilo murmured, voice rough with sleep. His tail floated in a lazy arc as artificial gravity flickered briefly and rebalanced. Emery didn't turn. The stars never complain or ask too much. They also don't bring you soup when you're sick. No, that's what I keep you around for. Nilo snorted softly, the feline version of a chuckle. He blinked slowly at her, eyes reflecting constellations in the darkened glass. "You're brooding. I'm thinking," which is just brooding with more syllables. A small bell rang in the control panel. Not a warning chime, just the soft alert of a new assignment. Emery leaned forward and tapped the console. "Oh," she said softly, eyes scanning the message. "We have a delivery." "To where?" "Yulin Prime." Nilo's ears flattened. "Isn't that the planet that outlawed dreams?" "Something like that," Emery replied. "But they've placed a request. For a dream." Nilo blinked, then rose to all fours and padded slowly over to her side. He peered at the message. A glowing, rotating image hovered above the console. A dream, carefully extracted and contained in a stardust glass orb. "I thought they didn't believe in that sort of thing anymore. Maybe they're trying to remember how." Chapter 2. Cargo of Wonder. The orb hovered just above the console's surface, casting gentle lavender light across the dash. Inside, strands of light twisted like strands of thought. Slow, liquid movements reminiscent of deep water and fireflies. The dream, Emery knew, had come from child. It always looked different when sourced from children, brighter, more fluid, less linear. Adults' dreams tended to fracture or harden over time, become heavier with metaphor and memory. But this one danced. Nilo tilted his head as the orb pulsed in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. "And they want us to deliver it." "Yes." "The Yulinite Council." A single unit, hand-delivered to their Hall of Echoes. Emery's voice was half curious, half skeptical. "They say it's for cultural restoration." Nilo sighed, long and low. "You know what I think of bureaucrats and their sudden interest in dreams." "You think they'll ruin it," Emery said gently, without argument. "They always do. Package it, sell it, give it a ribbon and a purpose." She let the silence settle after that. The Hollow Finch coasted through it effortlessly. Her engines remained idle, thrusters barely breathing as the ship's course was adjusted through gentle magnetic drifts and calculated solar winds. Emery stood and stretched, her sweater sleeves rolling down over her wrists as she padded barefoot across the warm floor panels. She opened a cupboard beside the bridge and took down a lockbox lined with velvet. With careful fingers, she guided the dream orb inside. The moment it touched the velvet, the lights dimmed slightly, as though even photons wanted to whisper. "This one feels different," she said, voice quieter now. "Like it knows where it's going." "All dreams know where they're going," Nilo said, now curling up beside her seat again. "It's just people who forget how to follow." A few hours later, Emery made soup. Not from a packet, not synthetically synthesized, but from real ingredients, grown in their own orbital greenhouse: sunleaf, starch root, galaxy peas. She let the pot simmer while she stared through the dome at a distant binary star, its twin lights making the tea kettle gleam silver and gold at once. "Do you ever miss gravity?" she asked absently as she stirred. "I miss how people used to walk slower in it," Nilo replied from his perch. She chuckled. "Maybe they'll still do that on Yulin." "They won't. Everything there is stillness and structure. Everything measured. You'll see." The soup hissed gently as she poured it into 2 small bowls, one for her, one with added fish flakes for Nilo. They ate in the quiet galley, surrounded by warm amber lights and the occasional gentle creak of the ship's frame as it adjusted to a slow curve in their trajectory. Afterward, Emery pulled out her travel journal, a real one, bound in soft gray leather. She didn't write every day, but for the important journeys, she liked to leave breadcrumbs. Notes, sketches, sometimes just smells and feelings turn into words. Entry 274 Yulin Prime. Delivery. Oniric extract #A31. Child source. Cargo remarkably coherent. Rhythmic pulses. Emotional resonance suggests eagerness. Nilo skeptical. "I am too, but something's drawing us there." Dream smells like river light and warm linen. Fils familiar. When she looked up from the page, Nilo was already asleep, tail twitching slightly in his dreams. If cats, even bioengineered ones, still had such things. Emery reached for a blanket and curled up beside the window. Outside, the stars moved imperceptibly, silent, patient, waiting. Chapter 3. The detour through Solace 9. 3 days into the journey, a soft chime echoed through the ship, a notification ping, not urgent, but firm enough to cut through the hush. Emery was in the greenhouse, tending to a vine of moonberries, her sleeves rolled up and hands gently brushing soil that felt strangely cool under the ship's synthetic sunlight. Nilo was asleep in a hanging hammock, one leg draped over the edge, claws twitching in dreamland. Message received. The ship's soft-voiced AI intoned from a ceiling node. "Source?" Emery asked, wiping her hands on a towel. "Station Solace 9. Automated request for assistance." She blinked. "Solace? That's off route. Estimated delay, 21 hours. No navigacional fáciles. Local systems indicate environmental degradation in auxiliary greenhouse sectors." "Ah." Emery glanced out the greenhouse window where the planet-sized station drifted like a speck among gas clouds. "Someone's plants are dying." Nilo appeared in the doorway, mid-yawn. "Please tell me we're not becoming galactic gardeners now." "I think we already are," Emery replied with a soft smile. And they asked nicely. Solace 9 wasn't a station so much as a sanctuary, a massive, floating botanical habitat created long ago by a species who believed that every world should have a place to breathe. There were no residents anymore. Not really. The caretakers had left after funding dried up. What remained were quiet corridors, whispering leaves, and miles of flora that no longer knew the touch of tending hands. The hollow finch docked smoothly beneath one of the petal-shaped hangars. Its ramp extended with a quiet hiss, and Emery stepped out into a hall that smelled of moss and dust. Nilo followed close behind, his eyes flicking between patches of shadow and patches of green, ears alert. "Still smells like life," Emery murmured. "Also smells like mildew." They wandered deeper into the station, guided by dim floor lights and the AI's quiet directions. The damage was clear. Climate regulators had failed in one quadrant, and several species of temperate plants were wilting from unexpected heat. Emery rolled up her sleeves again. For hours, they worked in companionable silence. She restored nutrient circuits, replaced faulty thermostats, and spritzed water over tired leaves. Nilo, surprisingly dexterous, cleared fungal blooms and carried tools with his teeth, grumbling the whole time but never stopping. At one point, Emery sat down beside a cracked fern bowl and took a sip from her canteen. She glanced at the vines above her, watching how their slow curls began to lift again, reaching, ever so faintly, toward the UV panels. "This place used to be sacred," she said, "a pilgrimage for naturalists." "I remember," Nilo replied, curling into a patch of solar light. "Before everything got fast. Maybe it still is. Sacred, I mean. Just quieter now." He blinked at her, slow and thoughtful. They stayed the night in a meditation chamber filled with hanging lanterns. Emery unrolled her sleeping mat and stared up at the glass ceiling, where vines trailed like constellations against the stars. The dream orb was safe in the ship's vault, but even from here, she swore she could feel it humming softly, as though it, too, approved of the pause. Chapter 4. A Starflower for the Journey. The morning cycle on Solace. 9 came not with alarms or announcements, but with light. Soft, simulated sunlight filtered through canopy glass domes, catching dew that clung to leaves and casting long shadows across tile pathways. Emery sat cross-legged beneath a fruiting balm tree, sipping tea made from leaves they'd gathered the night before, peppermint spiral and a touch of firegrass. It smelled like sunrise and memory. Nilo was perched beside a moss fountain, tail flicking. His tongue was cleaning his left paw in a rhythm she'd come to associate with mild concern. "They left it all behind," he said finally. "Years of engineering, biogenetics, symbiotic soil balances, and then just poof, gone." Emery stared down at her tea. "Some say they ran out of money. Others say they ran out of faith." Nilo looked up. "Which do you believe?" She paused, then gave a soft shrug. "I think they just got tired." They walked the winding garden paths once more before departure, checking the repair systems and admiring how the leaves had begun lifting, some plants already responding to the rebalanced climate. One in particular caught Emery's eye. It was a small starflower bush, a species long considered extinct. 6 petals on each bloom, each petal a different hue, glimmering faintly with bioluminescent veins. Its leaves shimmered like water when touched. "I haven't seen one of these since," she trailed off. "Since Earth," Nilo finished. Before the soil went gray. She knelt, fingers hovering just above the bloom. Then, as if the plant understood the significance, one flower detached itself from the stem and floated gently into her palm. A gift. Back aboard the hollow finch, the flower was placed in a tiny crystal case within the ship's memory alcove, where keepsakes from each delivery were stored. A carved stone from the moon monks of Ressa, a music box that played the wind from Aaron's rings, a half-written poem from a dying boy on Ventari 3. "I didn't expect to find beauty on this leg of the trip," Emery said as she settled into the pilot's chair. "Isn't that when it usually finds you?" Nilo responded, stretching luxuriously. The course to Yulin Prime re-engaged with a low hum. The stars resumed their slow drift past the hull, the same way time moved here, patient, expansive, serene. In the cargo hold, the dream orb pulsed once, brighter than before, like a heartbeat. Emery frowned. "Did you see that?" "Yes," Nilo said, watching. "It's responding. To what?" "Maybe to where it's going." Emery leaned back, letting the ship guide itself through the currents of starlight. Let's hope Yulin's still a place that remembers how to feel. Chapter 5. The Sleeper Signal. The hollow finch glided in silence. Days passed like the turning of pages in a book Emery couldn't quite remember reading. The quiet between Solace, 9, and Yulin Prime was deeper than usual, a kind of hush that pressed gently around the hull, as though space itself had slowed its breath. They passed nebulae that looked like sleeping beasts. Dust clouds painted in hues of sapphire and rose-curled like the folds of dreams. Occasionally, small freighters blinked past them, heading to more practical destinations. But no one hailed, no one interrupted. On the third day, the dream orb began to glow again. This time not just a pulse, but a steady shimmer, like moonlight reflecting off moving water. Emery stood before the vault, watching it behind its stardust glass casing. "Something's changing," she whispered. Nilo padded silently to her side. "It's communicating." "With who?" He was quiet for a moment, then flicked his tail once. "With someone who's dreaming." Emery raised an eyebrow. "Dreams don't send signals. Maybe not on their own. But if someone's mind is tuned to the same frequency, it could resonate. Especially with a dream this strong." "Are you saying someone's pulling it?" "Not pulling. Calling." They triangulated the signal. It wasn't coming from Ulan Prime. Not exactly. It originated from a small orbital habitat that circled the planet like a forgotten satellite. No official name, just a designation. Habitat V8 Delta. It wasn't on their delivery manifest. Emery leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled beneath her chin. Could be interference. But could be the dream's true destination. She looked at the shimmering orb again. The pulse was more rhythmic now. Softer. Urgent, but not afraid. "Change of plans," she said. "Daring," Nilo said dryly. "Instinct," she replied. Nilo flicked a claw. Same thing. The approach to the habitat was smooth. The satellite had no external lights, no defense grid, no obvious activity. Just an old docking ring, scuffed from decades of use and neglect. The hollow finch latched gently onto it with magnetic arms. Inside the airlock, the atmosphere was stale but breathable. Lights flickered on as Emery and Nilo entered. Motion sensors slow to respond, but functional. Dust floated in the beam of their shoulder lamps. The habitat smelled like old metal and recycled air. They followed the signal through the corridors, past sealed rooms, flickering consoles, and long-forgotten doors, until they found the sleeper. She was in a suspended stasis pod, curved and glassy, covered in vines of circuitry and white rust. A young woman, maybe 17. Her hair floated in the fluid like silk thread. Her face was peaceful. The signal was coming from her. A neural tether, one so old it shouldn't have been active, flashed in faint sync with the orb's glow. "She's dreaming," Emery whispered. Nilo nodded slowly. "And the dream wants to go to her." Chapter 6. The Dreamer's Name. Emery stared at the girl in the pod, her breath held tight in her chest. The chamber was barely lit, just a few panels on the walls still functioning, flickering pale blue across wires and data sockets too old for any modern port. The liquid in the pod shimmered faintly, like moonlight on a dark sea. The girl's eyelids fluttered from time to time, but her expression never changed. Peaceful, focused, somewhere deep within herself. Nilo hopped onto the pod's control panel. "System's ancient, but I can still read some of it." He tapped at a cracked screen with one claw. Lines of unreadable code scrolled past until it paused on one clear word. "Yvain." Emery tilted her head. "That's her name." "Maybe," Nilo said, "or the name she gave herself in the dream." The orb, still secured in Emery's satchel, began to hum again. She gently removed it, and the moment it emerged into the room, its glow intensified, no longer a heartbeat, but a beckoning. It drifted upwards in her hands and began to pull gently toward the pod. "It wants to go in," Emery said softly, watching it. "We can't just plug a wild dream into someone's neural system. She might be mid-cycle. Her cortex is still active." Emery glanced at the girl's face again. "Maybe the dream didn't come from her mind," she said. "Maybe it came to her." She placed the orb near the pod's interface port. It shimmered in response, adjusting its pulse until it matched the slow rhythm of the girl's breath. A faint ping echoed from the terminal. Consensus achieved. Permission granted. The orb melted, not into liquid, not into light, but into memory. It flowed through the neural tether and into the stasis pod, vanishing in tendrils of color and sound only Emery and Nilo could barely perceive. The girl's eyes moved rapidly under their lids. Her fingers twitched. Then stillness. They sat there for nearly an hour, saying nothing. The lights in the chamber grew warmer, almost imperceptibly, as though the ship itself recognized that something had shifted. Finally, Nilo stretched. She's stabilizing. Emery nodded. What do you think she saw? Could be anything. A world. A memory. An answer. Or a beginning. They stayed another night aboard the Habitat. The chambers were cold, but quiet. Emery laid her bedroll beside a viewport, the starlight catching faint outlines of passing ships far in the distance. She couldn't sleep. Not really. She kept thinking about the look on the girl's face. That serenity. That invitation. Was she still dreaming now? Or had the dream ended and a new one begun? Chapter 7. The Garden Inside. The Habitat remained quiet as Emery and Nilo prepped for departure. No alarms. No signals. Just the steady pulse of a life support system that now seemed impossibly healthier than when they arrived. Emery returned to the pod once more before leaving. The girl, Yvain, still floated in the fluid, but something had changed. A faint smile now played across her lips. A blush of color had returned to her cheeks. She looks like she's dreaming a gentler world, Emery murmured. Or remembering one, Nilo replied, perched on the rail. Maybe the orb wasn't meant to awaken her, just to bring her peace. Emery watched a small hollow sprig of ivy unfurl from the neural port near Yvain's temple. Nothing the system had installed. A side effect of the dream's arrival, perhaps. She reached forward and traced a finger along the inside of the pod glass. Rest well, traveler, she whispered. We'll carry the stars while you dream. Back aboard the hollow Finch, the cargo bay felt oddly hollow. The orb was gone. There was nothing to deliver now, at least not in the physical sense. But Emery didn't feel empty. If anything, her heart felt strangely full, as if the act of giving the dream had replaced the need to carry it. The ship undocked silently from the Habitat and re-entered the Starstream, the faint IO